Let's start with the first game of the weekend. The LA Rams head to Carolina to face the Panthers. When we look at this game, this is the biggest spread of the weekend, and it makes sense on paper, but this is also a rematch. Back on November 30th, Carolina won this game 31-28. Stafford threw 2 picks and had a fumble, and Bryce Young was nearly perfect with a 156 passer rating. A perfect passer rating is 158.3. So Bryce Young was absolutely stellar in this game. And in that game, the Panthers somehow controlled the game without really overwhelming the Rams physically. What's interesting is that the Rams in this game actually ran the ball extremely well outside of Stafford having his miscues. The Rams running backs had 20 carries for 153 yards, over 7 yards per carry, yet those turnovers lost in the game in a close match back then. So just looking at the spread, the Rams are a heavy favorite, 10 points, and the largest favorite by far of any game this weekend, over double of the next closest. So looking back on their first regular season matchup, we'll start with this. Back in week 13, the Panthers win by 3. Stafford, like I said, 3 total turnovers. Bryce Young, nearly perfect, 75% completion percentage, no turnovers. You look at this matchup, Gaston, the Rams running backs, 7.6 yards per carry. I mean, that is unreal. And the Panthers running backs had 35 rushes for 141 yards, only 4 yards per carry. So the Rams running backs almost doubling the output in terms of yards per carry from this. And then both teams only had 2 sacks. So it's not like the D-line was doing much dominating on either side of this. So you look at this game, you look at Matthew Stafford potentially winning an MVP here. How is Matthew Stafford's legacy affected if the Rams lose this game?
I think he's still a Hall of Famer, but I do think it does affect his legacy in LA. The reality is what he's done in this league is still very incredible. He's been good everywhere from Detroit to LA. He's won a Super Bowl. He is a Hall of Fame quarterback. But I do think it kind of tarnishes this MVP race, and there is still time for Drake May to win it. I think losing this causes Drake May to win the MVP.
Just a statistic that I want to bring up, because a lot of people like to talk about the schedule and how teams perform. So this year, we all know the Rams had in stacked division. They played 4 games against playoff teams just in their division alone. But Rams this year against current playoff teams this season were 4-4. Pretty solid. The Panthers against current playoff teams, and this includes the Rams, were 2-5. So both of these teams have played 7 and 8 games respectively against playoff teams. If you will break into the other matchups, but that's pretty high. 8 games and 7 games against playoff teams. That's pretty high when it comes to this. You'll see that there's a pattern of not playing a ton of playoff teams because obviously the easier schedule you play, the better chance that you have more wins, the more likely you are to be in the playoffs. But besides that, you look at this, Rams they're 500 against playoff teams, 4-4. The Panthers an abysmal 2-5. Guess in those 2 records, you see that against current playoff teams. Does that mean anything to you? Is this just, maybe luck of the draw? When you see those records, what kind of impact do you think this has on this?
I don't think it's as big of a deal. I think with the NFL, it's so competitive. Any team can win any week unless it's the Jets. Every week, I think even the bad teams, the Browns, you saw it this past couple of weeks, they beat the Steelers. You look at a team like Titans, there's been times they've played the Texans, who are a playoff team right now, very, very close. Winning games is as long as you're winning games, you're winning games. I think when you're really evaluating things, it's about how you win too and how well your roster holds up. I think the most successful teams are teams that are really well built in the trenches. If you're not built well in the trenches, I think you got a very limited – you can't go as far in the playoffs.
And this is going to be such a weird game. The way it is set up, it's a rematch. However, the team that won the first game, and let's not forget, this is also in Carolina once again. It is a home game for a team. But you have a team that has a losing record hosting a game. They're 10-point underdogs, the biggest of any matchup this week, and they beat this team already. So if you look at it on paper and that, it looks really weird, but that's just how well respected the Rams are in the league. They're one of the Super Bowl favorites, top 3 in betting odds. It's just a very weird matchup, and we will see. Maybe the Panthers and Bryce Young, Dave Canales will pull off some sort of crazy upset. But speaking of weird games, let's talk about cold, let's talk about wind, and let's talk about familiarity. We dive into Saturday night's matchup. The divisional matchup, the Green Bay Packers head to Chicago in a rematch against the Bears. This is the tightest spread of the weekend. Only 1.5 point favorite are the visiting Packers. So again, another away team who is the favorite. The third time these teams are playing in 5 weeks. Kickoff, it will be 29 degrees. It'll feel like 13 degrees and wind gusts up to 35 miles per hour. It's that North football. The elements are real, and it's going to become physical. It's going to hurt, and those fans in Chicago are going to be electric. Nothing about this game, nothing about this matchup screams that this is going to be an offensive masterclass, even with Ben Johnson out there. So, like we mentioned, the elements are going to be reigning in. This is supposed to be a close matchup according to Vegas, and this is the third time these teams are playing in 5 weeks. There's going to be nothing that either team is going to say, hey, this is new. None of that. These teams are familiar with each other. They're division rivals. They're playing so many times, so quickly. So let's look back at these games since these teams have played each other 2 times. They each won 1 game. We'll go back to the first matchup, December 7th. Green Bay wins by a touchdown in Green Bay. They really kind of dominated this game. They led for most of the game. Chicago tied it with about 8 minutes left. And then Green Bay went down on a 4.5-minute drive, scores a touchdown. Chicago doesn't answer. Green Bay wins. And then the second matchup on December 20th, Green Bay led 16-6 by 10 points with 5 minutes left. No Jordan Love in this game. He got injured, left in the second quarter. Malik Willis was playing for almost the entirety of the game and in overtime. The Bears got a field goal with 2 minutes left and then kicked an onside kick, recovered it, go down, score a touchdown, send it to overtime. And as we all know, we saw the deep bomb from Caleb Williams to DJ Moore to win the game in a thrilling end, game-winning touchdown. Chicago electric. And now here we have Chicago winning the NFC North for the first time in almost a decade. So we look at these last 2 matchups. Green Bay has led or tied the entirety of both games. We're talking about literally the Bears never having a lead until they score that game-winning touchdown. So I guess maybe it counts for a second, if not at all. So Green Bay, if you were to look at it almost like a boxer, they played 8 or 9 rounds, and they've tied or won every single round until they really got knocked out. That's really what the Bears did in that game. It's really unbelievable how they lost that, almost winning with Malik Willis in there. You look at Jordan Love, his first game, he had over 200 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Caleb Williams in those 2 games, over 400 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And it has only taken 1 sack in those 2 games. I think a very important stat when you look at it. We know that Caleb Williams had a really big issue his rookie season, taking a lot of sacks. This year, not so much. Only 1 sack against those Bears in the 2 games. And now we're talking about no Micah Parsons. So we'll see if he can continue that trend, because that fares very well if the Bears can make sure to limit any sacks that Caleb Williams can take. But Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, Gasson, you look at them. 2-minute drill at the end of the game. Who do you trust more to win the game for their team?
Caleb. Caleb should be undefeated against the Packers. And I think that's just, I'm going to stick with that take. 2024, when they first played them, Caleb led a game-winning drive, was throwing the dimes all over the field, and then field goal blocked. The loss they had in Lambeau Field, it was a goofy mistake. Caleb was driving the field all over them, and just a little bit of an underthrow, bad timing with Cole Kmet. That should be an easy touchdown. And I think that last game you saw against Caleb, against the Packers, Caleb's the best whenever he has the ball in his hands at the end of the game. That's when Caleb's his best. Caleb's issue, and it's kind of funny with Jordan Love, is I think Caleb struggles in the beginning of the game and staying consistent. But when the game matters and when tensions are high, that's when Caleb is the best. That's why he's the Iceman. And I think if there is a game-tying or game-winning situation and the ball is in his hands, I think he's winning the game. And I also think that with the Packers, I actually think Malik Willis playing is actually a better fit against the Bears. And the reason I'm going to say that is not because I think he's a better quarterback than Jordan Love, but the Bears can sometimes struggle to stop the run. They kind of struggle a little bit on the trenches, but the Bears have a really good secondary. And Malik Willis plays very conservatively, and he's really good at running the ball. I think that last game they played, he actually had a very, very good game. And I think it actually kind of helped the Packers that he was playing instead of Jordan Love, because with Jordan Love, he can move in the pocket, but he doesn't have that physical run, like running the ball forward compared to laterally. Like Jordan Love's really good at maneuvering around the pocket, but Malik Willis, you can do more quarterback design runs with him.
Yeah, not to mention that Caleb Williams has 6 game-winning drives this year. Unbelievable statistic from a second-year quarterback. Extremely rare to see. Almost reminds me of a young Matthew Stafford in his time with the Lions with all of his game-winning drives there. But we look at the current playoff team records. The Packers versus current playoff teams, they're 2-4. The Bears versus current playoff teams, 3-2. Again, like we said, both these teams are in the playoffs. They're playing each other. You take that out, the Packers are 1-3 versus current playoff teams. The Bears 2-1. Honestly, this favors the Bears a little bit, but you take in the weather to account. I like the Packers in this. I like the Packers to win by a field goal in this. Gaston, who do you got winning this game?
I think Bears-Packers. I'm going to go Bears. I think it's going to be close, so I don't think this is going to be a game that is – I think it's going to come down to 3 to 7 points.
I think it's going to be really close. I think it's going to be within a field goal and that sort of thing. Anything can happen. You could see Caleb Williams lead another game-winning drive, but I'm going to take history side, and I'm going to take Jordan Love, Toyota Thon Merchant, and the Green Bay Packers to win this game. Now let's move on into what might be the most physical game of the entire weekend, and that is the San Francisco 49ers and the Philadelphia Eagles. These are two teams whose rosters are built for January and February football, but they're coming into this game very differently. San Francisco has won 6 of their last 7 games, but just laid an egg against Seattle. Philadelphia has won 3 straight before resting its starters in last week's loss, but the offense has really not been explosive. We look at the injury report. Linebackers Bethune and Fred Warner both out. Trent Williams is questionable to play. I'm expecting him to play. The Eagles, like I said, they won 3 straight games. They were up on the Commanders in Week 18 before pulling all their starters. I wouldn't really count that as a loss for them. They would have won the game had their starters continued to play. The 49ers, like I said, before it's absolutely crapping the bed versus Seattle, had won 6 straight. We're looking like the hottest offense in the league. Brock Purdy had 10 touchdowns over 2 games before that game. And then against Seattle, Purdy only 127 yards and a pick. Christian McCaffrey, however, this one is absolutely unbelievable. 8 carries for 23 yards. I mean, they absolutely shut down McCaffrey, less than 3 yards per rush. And we really have not seen a worse McCaffrey performance in years, possibly. Obviously, he's been gone for injuries, but for games played, McCaffrey was absolutely shut down by Seattle. Maybe they provided the blueprint that the Eagles might try to copy with how strong of a front 7 they have. But let's talk about Philly's offensive side of the ball. Jalen Hurts, we all know he's been struggling. During that 3-game win streak, like I mentioned, only 470 total pass yards, so just about 150 on average. All of those games, not a single one that he's out over 200 passing yards per game. That is a real concern, especially against a defense that honestly has not been playing their best. The Seahawks defense, while they did only allow 13 points, the last few weeks, it's really just been shootouts that they've been playing against the Bears and the Colts. I mean, Phillip Rivers was dicing this up as a 42-year-old, 45-year-old, however he is. Gramps was dicing up the defense. Robert Saleh, as much credit as has been due, the injuries have piled up. Their defense is not an elite in any sort of way anymore, at least. So we look at this, the other side of the ball with the Eagles, the run game. Saquon has not been himself this year. Only 3 100-yard games from Saquon. It is very concerning when you look at the Eagles offense in this matchup. Again, not a great 49ers defense, but the Eagles offense is going to need to wake the hell up from their hibernation. The playoffs are here. They don't want to be one and done like they were 2 years ago and have to bring up that motivation. They are the reigning Super Bowl champions. They had a great trade deadline. They have all the talent to win this game, to win the Super Bowl, no doubt about that. But their offense needs to wake up from this slumber that they've been going on for the past month or so. But let's look at the current playoff teams and how they fare up. 4 games against the Seahawks and the Rams in their division alone. They are 4-4 against current playoff teams. The Eagles 3-3 against current playoff teams. So both teams in the fairly the same boat have broke even on that. An interesting stat, though. 49ers last week against the Seahawks, obviously didn't have a great game. They were only 2 of 9 on third down. When you look at something like that, Gaston, you hear 2 of 9 on third down. How does that translate to this game? Do we expect the same thing against the Eagles? What is the 49ers' goal on third down against the Eagles this week?
I think just playing efficiently. I think it's hard to win a game. I think the biggest downs you can determine, like how a game team is, you can determine by third down's the biggest down, arguably. And if you're not doing well on third down, that means your drives are getting cut short, which means you're having less time on offense. Your defense is getting more tired because they have to play more. One thing to talk about that last game against the Seahawks is I think there's a chance that the 49ers would have came back and made it a better game without that tipped pass that was picked off. I think the Niners are still a good team. I think that game was more of just a matchup that just didn't go their way. So I got to say about that.
I think a statistic that is very interesting is that the Eagles defense has only allowed 14 passing touchdowns this entire season. That is the lowest in the NFL and looks troublesome for Brock Purdy. When you look at Brock Purdy, Gaston, is Brock Purdy even a top 10 quarterback in the NFL?
I think he is. I think he's efficient with the ball. I mean, the way I judge quarterbacks is I don't judge them based off talent. I base off how they can execute an offense. And I think he executes that offense to perfection. I know Mac Jones is having a really good year, and people use that against Brock Purdy. I don't think that's necessarily the case, though. This is a guy who's been to a Super Bowl. He should have been to 2 Super Bowls if he didn't get injured with his UCL injury in 2023 when he was playing against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. He provides stability to that team. You see what happens when he's not there the year before, before Mac Jones wasn't there, whenever they were stuck with Brandon Allen and Joshua Dobbs. No Niners quarterback before Brock Purdy was playing nearly as efficient, even when Jimmy Garoppolo was there and they were winning games. He was not nearly as good as Brock Purdy just because he was the last pick in the draft and because he's not 6'4" and has a cannon for an arm. I think that's why people don't consider him a top 10. But if you watch him play film, you watch how efficient he is, I think he's a top 10 quarterback.
The 49ers' key to victory in this matchup will be Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey needs to run the ball strongly so it can open up the play action for Purdy to find his favorite target, Kittle. If they don't do that, I really think this offense might be limited just like they were against Seattle. For the Eagles, their key to victory, Jalen Hurts needs to have 200-plus passing yards. I just want to bring up this statistic. I heard this. Unbelievable. The Eagles are 10-0 when Jalen Hurts has under 200 passing yards. However, I'm going to say that he's going to need 200 passing yards for them to win this game because Saquon has not been playing his best football. I know that they've been winning games with him having under 200 passing yards, that 3-game win streak, but this is different. This is January football. This is win and go on. You're playing at home. The weather isn't absolutely awful. Jalen Hurts needs to pass the ball better, and he's a big game quarterback. We've seen him in the Super Bowl. He is a star when the lights are the brightest. So Jalen Hurts, 200 passing yards. That's the Eagles' key to victory. If you enjoyed this, hit like, subscribe, and drop your wildcard takes in the comments. Appreciate you all for watching. We'll see you in the aftermath of the wildcard weekend.